thanks to all of you for joining us today. We are going to talk about one of the most remote and pristine and just awe-inspiring places that I've ever climbed in. I'm sure you would agree, Mark. Um, and that is Antarctica's Vinson Massif. So today I'm joined by Mark Gunlogson, who's the owner of Mountain Madness. He has been guiding and working in the mountains since 1987 and working with Mountain Madness since 1994. During that time, he's guided on all 7 continents and had the pleasure also of guiding Mountain Madness's first expedition to Antarctica, which was in 2000. So he'll share a little bit about that with us today. He's also guided Denali and plenty of other high altitude expeditions in the Andes, as well as the Himalaya. And at his time leading Mountain Madness, he's really focused on developing off the beaten path trips like treks in Bhutan and some infrequently climbed peaks in Colombia, as well as a lot of other really cool adventures that many guide companies don't put on their roster. So thanks for joining us, Mark.
Okay, thanks for the intro, Lisa, and thanks to all of you joining us today. Also, we'll be able to provide some useful information for you for your planning of climb of Vinson. Also, I want to thank Lisa for hosting today, and also for her company Alpine Athletics for partnering with us on this webinar. I think you'll find that's going to be a useful added value here for you. So yeah, let's just get started here.
Yeah, so Mark mentioned Alpine Athletics. I'm the owner of that company, as well as a climber. I've been through Alpine Athletics coaching athletes since 2018, and myself have climbed the 7 summits. So I'm looking forward to sharing some of what I learned from traveling in Antarctica with you today. Mark and I are both in Seattle, wrapping up a really fun guiding and climbing season in the Cascades this summer. So hopefully, and for Mountain Madness, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but this was your 41st season guiding in the Cascades.
Yep. No, it's been a great journey, and it's continuing on. So here we go.
Yeah. So if you've gotten out this summer, I hope you all have, please drop your favorite climb in the chat. You'll notice there's a little Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you have a question, as Mark and I are chatting today, please use the Q&A button to send that question to us. And we'll have some time at the end of our time together today to go through all of those questions. But for now, let us know where you've been climbing this summer. We'd love to hear about what other people are up to. So let's get started. Let's talk about Mount Vinson, just sort of at a glance to get us all kind of grounded. As I said, it's the highest point in Antarctica, which makes it one of the 7 summits. It's 16,000 feet above sea level, which doesn't really sound that high, I think, when you compare it to other peaks, but it's located very close to the South Pole, as you'd guess, just 750 miles away. And the atmospheric pressure is lower at the pole, and so that makes that 16,000 feet summit feel even higher. Some people will say, I don't know if there's exact math about this, but that it feels more like 17 or 18,000 feet when you're at the summit of Vinson Massif. So a challenging climb. One of the biggest challenges, I think, related to climbing Vinson is just the temperature. So on summit day, you can expect temperatures to be -30 or -40, and that's without the wind. Obviously, factoring that in, it's going to be much, much colder. And we'll talk a little bit later, Mark, we'll talk about cold management and getting prepared to travel and live in that cold environment for several weeks. I always like to look back at the history of the mountains that I climb. It was first summited in 1966, which really isn't all that long ago when you think about it, and you think about how long we've been climbing mountains in this world. You can imagine logistics were a big obstacle that had to be overcome before Vinson was climbed. And even today, logistics are a big part of, how we make climbing on Vinson safe and available to people. But even so, only about 3,500 people have climbed Vinson since 1966, and that's far fewer than Summit Everest, for example. So it really is a small group of people that have climbed to the highest peak in Antarctica. As I said, it was first guided by Mountain Madness in 2000. Mark led that expedition. And back then, there were some ski descents as well, which make it kind of fun to learn about. We'll talk about those in a little bit too. Do you actually, Mark, do you remember what those ski descents were like?
Oh, well, I think they're pretty rare. A lot of people wanted to do it, but actually, we had a couple that pulled it off. We had a couple that were actually doing ski descents off the seven summit. So that was really exciting for
Very
them.
cool.
And skiing's great. It's a little icy at times, but overall, it's a great place to ski for sure.
Yeah, and what a cool thing to be able to say you've done too.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's talk. I mentioned logistics, and let's just give an overview of what's involved in getting to just to the point of being able to climb the mountain. It's not like other peaks where you fly from your home country and land and, walk for a few days or a week to get to a base camp and then start climbing. So if your goal is to go to Vinson, you will fly from your home country to Punta Arenas, Chile. This is the southernmost city in that country. And in fact, Punta Arenas is closer to Antarctica than it is to the capital of Chile. So to give you an idea of sort of where geographically we're talking about, that flight from Punta Arenas is organized by Antarctic Logistics and Expeditions. So that's our partner there, ALE. When you get to Punta Arenas, you will have a city tour. You'll meet your team and you'll do a safety briefing also with ALE just to make sure that everyone understands sort of the seriousness of what you're embarking on and how to care for yourself, what the signs of frostbite are, all those sort of details. Um, from there, you'll fly to Union Glacier, which is in Antarctica. And Mark, I'll let you, if you want to expand on some of those logistics of getting to the continent of Antarctica.
Yeah. So first of all, one thing to note, because we know there's options out there for people to choose different companies, but one thing that's important to note is Ale, they are providing all the services for all the guide services. So you're not going to find anything different in that regard. So from the moment you land and you meet with Ale and do the logistics briefing and all that, and the moment you get on the plane to fly down to Union Glacier, you're all going to be in the same boat, so to speak. And I think um, one of the things you'll see almost immediately, probably when you first step on the plane, that you'll quickly understand why this trip is so expensive. And that's one of the most impressive things about the trip. I think is just seeing the logistics and the job Ale does. And they do an amazing job. They're very well organized, and you're in good hands with them for sure.
And today you fly, when you land on Union Glacier, you fly in a 757. So a passenger plane, but it was much different, Mark, when you and I flew there, even more different when you flew there in 2000. What was that trip like then?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, when we flew from Punta Arenas, we landed on the continent in a different airstrip. So we landed in a place called Patriot Hills, but we didn't have the luxury of a 757. We were actually in a cargo plane, a C-130, and they rigged some seats for everybody and threw all the gear in the back of the plane and put up a net so the gear wouldn't go flying all around, and that was it. So you sat in there, and there's no luxury involved, and it was comfortable enough, but it was cool because we were able to go up the pilots let everybody get a view of what it was like out there, because otherwise we're just stuck in this plane with no windows. And so, but anyway, we landed in Patriot Hills, same idea, big glacial, icy blue runway, and I mean that was just incredible in its own right. But and then we actually had the main camp set up there in Patriot Hills, and we flew from there to base camp. Whereas now in the 757, you're going to be landing near Union Glacier. You land on a bigger strip. They found a better place to get bigger planes in. So now they get the 757s, and ALs actually lease these really nice planes. So you get, you know, you can watch movies, you got windows, you got heat, it's
A
all,
bathroom.
yeah, it's a lot of different experience. And so, you know, you're still landing on a big icy runway. And from there, you take it's about a 5 mile drive, ground transportation to Union Glacier. And, you know, as it shows here, it's a fully operational base camp, and it's dining tents, and there's tents set up for socializing, there's showers. So it's really an amazing place to start the journey up the mountain. But the one thing we can talk about really quickly is, as far as ale goes, they run a really tight schedule with the plane, and you may get stuck in Punta Arenas for a day or two, sometimes three. But when it's go time, you got to be there. You got to be ready, because they don't mess around with the weather windows. If that's what is holding them back to get to the ice. So one of the things we want to make sure when you go to book your flights that you are getting there in ample time to Punta Arenas. You know, enough time to, like, if your bags get delayed or whatever, you have time to deal with that. And also, you can have delays on the end as well, as you'd imagine. And so we recommend people get either a date far enough out so you know you're going to have enough time if you're delayed, or you know what the cancellation policies are on your flight back home. So, but the main thing is getting there on time, and because AL doesn't wait for anybody that's late, so they got this schedule, they got this big plan. They're when it's go time, it's go time. So
Yep.
just some you can talk to us when you're ready to book your flight. We recommend you make sure you're getting there in the right time, and you don't want to cut it too close. So that's an important piece of your planning, I think.
Yep. And it's interesting to me to see how, we've gone from these cargo planes that were like not luxurious at all. You were basically treated like cargo. You had to wear your down suit and big boots on the plane because there was no heat. So now more like commercial passenger flights. There was a question that just popped in the chat. So thanks, Jean Charles, for that. What is the time zone difference between Punta Arenas and Vinson Base Camp? And it's actually the same. So they're both on Chilean time. So that'll be easy if you're sort of negotiating flights or thinking about your travel plans. They're on the same time zone. And once you land at Union Glacier, it's really interesting to see how there's just this little city there. Like it's a fully operational city. There are, dining tents and showers, bathrooms. When I was there, there were a lot of scheduled talks that different scientists and explorers would give at different times. There's people who are there for the whole season. There's a medical facility there. So I would say if you're lucky, you get to spend a day or two there to just kind of experience that little community that exists there during the summer season. But eventually you will fly to Vinson Base Camp. This is a pretty quick flight. It takes like 45 minutes or so. And now you'll be on a much smaller plane on a Twin Otter that's equipped to land at base camp. And now you're ready to start climbing. So we'll talk a little bit, Mark. Why don't you share just a little bit more about, yeah, what it's like to climb Vinson?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that, for me anyway, like Denali, part of the highlight of climbing Denali, if you've climbed Denali, is the flight into the mountain, and this
Yeah.
this being there up above it all with that bird's eye view is so incredible. And of course, Vincent's not any different. The flight in's amazing. Um, but I think why people go to Vinson, there's obvious reason. It's a seven summit, and if you're on that pathway, then you gotta go there. So that's an obvious reason. I think some people might choose to go to Vinson sort of as a warm-up climb, if you will. For it's not a warm-up climb at all. It's very cold, but it's a good sort of stepping stone, let's say, to Denali or Everest. Sort of like a mini version of those big peaks. So the opportunity to sort of get out there in a cold weather environment and sort of the challenge of the extended period at very cold temperatures is very useful for Denali and Everest as well. So so those are a couple reasons. But I think if you talk to people that have actually done Vinson, I think they'll tell you the reason to climb Vinson is just to go there and experience it. Because for me, I feel like the Himalayas and Andes and maybe the Alps are all, there's some similarities. They're all kind of very very similar in a lot of ways. But the minute you get to Union Glacier and get on that plane to base camp and you sit yourself down at base camp, look around you, you're in an incredibly unique place. And that's, to me, that's like what the main reason to climb it. It's just
Yeah.
absolutely incredible. It's remote, it's pristine. In the 21st century these days, there's not as many places like that as there used to be. So it's very unique that way. And I think that's to me anyway, it's a main reason to go. So I don't know what you think, Lisa, but
Yeah, I was I guess a little overwhelmed by just how pristine and beautiful it is. I think what I remember about Antarctica was, when we look around ourselves every day, no matter where you are, you see something that's been like touched by man or built that's man-made. And in Antarctica, especially when you got away from Union Glacier, like it's just wilderness. It's just absolutely wild and natural. And it was really, really cool to be in a place like that that hadn't been, touched or changed by mankind. Um, I also found it interesting and really sort of heartwarming to see how well the people who operate and whether they're scientists or climbers or they're skiers, how well people want to preserve that pristine wilderness. So there's a treaty that governs how we manage the land of Antarctica. And we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end, what that means to climbers. But just to see how important that was to everyone was really a nice thing to see also. So yeah, I would love to go back.
yeah, I've kind of gotten used to more warm trips. But if I was going to go on another trip, I would go to Vinson for sure, just because it's so unique. And people ask me what favorite climb is, and it's almost impossible to answer that. But I can assure you that Vinson is in the top three for sure, because it's just
Yeah.
so unique.
Yeah, it's a special place for sure. Well, let's talk about the climb itself. And I know it was a little different when you climbed it, Mark. So maybe you can sort of point out like this is the current route. We'll talk about that, but how has it changed over the years since you were first there in 2000?
Yeah, so when we went there, you can see the base camps off the right, and so really, it was the same strategy basically. Yeah, base camp, a low camp, and a high camp. So that hasn't really changed. But if you look at this picture, we actually went further to the left and up that ice fall there,
Yeah.
and so it was different in that it was a little bit more hazardous than the route is currently, and so eventually they changed that and established a fixed line. It's a much safer way to get up to high camp, because we were going through crevasses and ice falls and everything. Just no fixed ropes, just regular rope team glacier travel climbing. So this new route here, which I forget when they put it in, but it's been a great improvement for everybody, I think, and it makes it a lot safer. Um, so really the strategy is if you had really good weather and you weren't concerned about altitude, you could climb the same probably in 3 or 4 days, right? But as it is, it's a cold, harsh environment. You have to have all your um, cold weather preparations in place. You got to sort of be able to sit and hunker down. If the wind starts blowing and you get stuck somewhere for a couple days, you got acclimatization. So it's it's no wonder when you factor all those things in it, it's more like, it's all a week or more depending on the conditions and the team. So what we do is in the next screen, you'll see the actual differences. There you go. Um, so from Union Glacier, you fly to base camp, and that's like a 95-mile flight. And then from there, you can start moving up the mountain. So from low camp, you can see that there's some big days, nothing super dramatic. It's all pretty reasonable. But what we're doing is we're pulling a sled and carrying a pack to the low camp. And so that's really the only sled hauling you do. And if you've been on Denali, you'll find just pulling the sled here in Vinson quite easy. So it's a nice way to get introduced to sled hauling too, actually. If you haven't been to Denali, it's a great place to get that experience. And so, it's one haul to low camp. And then again, it depends on the weather, it depends on the team. But you may take a rest day, get yourself organized, and move to high camp. You might review skills, and then once you got all that taken care of, or it could be that there's a weather window and you have to keep moving. So it really depends. So it's like any expedition, big expedition, you got to be flexible. But basically, once you're ready to start moving up, we do a double carry to high camp, and that gets us the first day you go up, that gets you familiar with the ropes and the line and the fixed lines, and sort of get you set up for moving up the next day. We cache all our stuff up there and go back down. And then when you're ready to go, you move up to high camp, and you see that's definitely a bigger day. It's distance wise, it's not that far, but it's 3,400 feet. You're going to be carrying some loads. So that's a challenging day. The two of them combined, you'll feel it. So you get to high camp, and you can either rest if we need to. If you need to rest, that's fine. Again, if there's a weather window and you got to move, you just got to move, because the weather there is generally pretty stable. But like any range like this, you can have weather come in for 2 or 3 days, and you just have to wait. So sometimes you have to push the schedule a little bit. Sometimes you can be a little bit more leisurely. But in any case, when you're ready to go, summit day is a big day. It's about 9 miles round trip and 3,600 feet of elevation gain. And the terrain is there's no fixed line, so it's just relatively straightforward glacier travel, and usually doesn't present any problems for our teams. And you're able to go up this big sort of basin and wrap around, and it's great because you're below the actual summit in that basin the whole time, and then you hang a left and you pop up on this ridge, and then it's like a really short walk to the summit. But it's just a stunning sort of experience to go from not really seeing much and then being on top of Antarctica. And that's where you get another. It's just so unique. You're out there in the middle of nowhere. There's nobody else around for hundreds of miles. You can see the curvature of the Earth. You're looking out at hundreds of square miles of glacier ice and ice fields. It's just like there's no place else like it. So, but yeah, it's a straightforward summit day. You get back down to high camp, and usually everyone's pretty tired, and so you spend the night there, and then next day you hightail back down to base camp and kick back there and wait for your flight. Sometimes you get there, you might be ahead of a group, or you might be ahead of or behind a group, so you might have to wait there a few days. And we put a cache in. We bring all the extra food to provide for that if needed. And otherwise, once they get people all together, you start flying back to the Union Glacier. If you're lucky, you get to wait there versus base camp, and so that's it. But then Union Glacier, you're there. You're ready to head back once the plane gets all loaded up and everybody's back from the climb, and back to Punta Arenas you go.
One thing we didn't talk about that affects the climbing schedule is the fact that we're fortunate to have almost 24 hours of daylight when we're
Ah,
climbing in
yeah.
Antarctica. So I remember being there and almost being disoriented, like not realizing that it was 2 in the morning, but it
Mhm.
was, perfectly bright outside and we were able to climb in those conditions, which I think really broadens the climbing window and gives us a lot of options if we need to move at times when we normally wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, that's right. Just like Denali as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
What do you think is the hardest day when you were guiding, Mark? Is it getting up to high camp or is it getting to the summit that people find most challenging?
I think getting a high camp for us because we didn't have fixed ropes, so we're actually skirting around crevasses and you're still not quite acclimatized and you're in the process of getting acclimatized, and so um, I thought that was the most difficult, and I think we had an incredible summit day. There was hardly a wind at all,
Nice.
and so just perfect conditions. That we've had other groups there. In fact, the couple I was telling you about that skied off the summit, they sat at high camp for 3 or 4 days, and it was like minus 40, and we almost pulled the plug. It was just too much, windy, cold, but they were very experienced, and so the guide decided that they could just wait it out, and they managed to get up there in pretty good condition. So I'm not sure what the hardest day is. It's going to vary for each individual. But did you have a harder day than
I
other?
think probably getting up to high camp was the hardest day for me. I had been on a fixed line on Denali before, but that I didn't have a ton of experience yet climbing on a fixed line. And your packs are, still relatively heavy getting up there, even though you're double carrying. And that trip up the fixed line is maybe 3-ish hours. So it was a big day for sure. I remember it being hot. There's this thing in the mountains where we're either freezing or we're frying, and that was a frying day for me. Um, and then getting up over that head wall into that plateau and just getting like blasted by the wind. And that made things feel very real. Like, yeah, I'm in Antarctica and I can't have like any exposed skin. I have to be very diligent about just self-care and making sure that I stay safe.
Yeah, well, and one of the things that people who I'm talking about on Vinson, it's very cold, but you can also have you're moving, so it could be sunny out, and you might have a fleece jacket on, and that's it.
Yep.
And you're moving more at a more steady pace because lower elevation. Um, Whereas, like on Everest, you're going to be going really slow. You get in the conga line, you're going to be getting cold. So it's different that way. So in some ways, it's harder to manage your your temperature on Vinson if you don't have like the right layers. And for that reason, people they often don't use the down suit because it's just
Yep.
so hard to regulate with that. So yeah.
Well, maybe we can talk a little bit more about preparation and what's needed.
Yeah. So um, a lot of this we sort of talked about a little bit. The daily routine, like Lisa says, um, the 24 hours of daylight, the routine, it can be, you can just do, oh, we're going to leave at 9 every morning or whatever. But, you may have to change the schedule up because of the weather. It might be that in the middle of the night, you have to go because the wind dies down then. So the daily routine, ideally you get into a rhythm, but you have to be flexible again. So again, it's this depends on the conditions in the group and whatnot. But and we just talked a little bit about the weather. Um, it's cold as you all know, but again, it can be warm. It's warm in a very sun thermal way because the minute the sun disappears, the temperatures just drop, and so you got to be ready and sort of be able to manage yourself with that the fluctuations in temperatures of this extreme cold. Um, so, and actually one of the things with the team, I call this a participatory expedition. So it is that in that, we expect people to set their tents and, the guides will do the cooking, but, you can help build snow walls, whatever. So I think And I think that's a really great way to sort of team build, and
Mhm.
you're watching out for everybody because a lot of times in the cold, your nose might be getting frost nipped and you don't know it. So it's like you're taking care of each other, and so we want to really we're all about team effort and everybody's equal. No one person's more important than the other. So and that's a philosophy that a lot of expeditions use, and we particularly try to adhere to that. So, the other thing is the weight. A lot of people asking about the weight. Um, so,
Perfect timing because William just asked a question about what
oh,
be on Summit Day. It's like you're
okay, get ready. No, so you're gonna be doing that one sled haul. So that can be a tough day. I mean, it's you might have a little more than 45, but it is like I said, it's like a really easy terrain to get up that low camp for in hauling the sled. So um, it's not bad. And then um, once you start moving up mountain, you do those double carries, might be 25, 30 pounds, but pretty manageable. Because you got to remember, a lot of times you're going to have a lot of clothes on, and so going up the fixed lines, you might have some food and some fuel, a tent, and that's it. So pretty reasonable all in all. It's a shorter expedition, so you don't have to have huge amounts of food and fuel, so that helps. But pretty reasonable uh, loads, I would say.
and on Summit Day, just a day pack, right, Mark?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Summit day, you're going to have what you would normally expect to have, and you're going to have, but you may not be wearing your down jacket if you're lucky, and it's a beautiful day. So you got to be able to, and this is something you can do when you're figuring out, your packs and which pack you might want to take on the summit. If you're going to take an extra one, you just got to think that you're going to have a lot of stuff potentially that's warm, that's got to go in there. So. Yeah.
Yep, pretty reasonable overall, I agree. But still requires some training. So let's talk about just general preparation for Vinson. This is what, as the owner of Alpine Athletics and the lead coach here, I get to do every day is help people prepare for their climbs. And we've helped many people prepare for Vinson and the rest of the 7 summits. We think about preparation as not just being ready physically, but also mentally and tactically for whatever mountain you're going to climb. And so for Vinson, a big part of that is what Mark mentioned is just really understanding how to manage and how to move in cold weather and having some system that you can use in order to do that. So Mark said people don't often wear down suits on Vinson, even though the cold warrants it. It's really nice to have the flexibility of like a heavy parka and a pair of heavy down pants so that you can, unzip or take one piece off and be able to really manage your cold weather system so that you can move efficiently and be able to adjust, right? If the sun dips down or the wind kicks up, you have the flexibility to add or subtract to keep yourself comfortable as you're moving. We aren't going to go into a lot of detail about gear this time, but Mark, why don't you talk a little bit more about prerequisites?
Yeah. So if you go to our website, we have qualifications section, and basically it's what you might expect. We want to have people that are experienced with glacier travel, and so you have to have that sort of foundational level of skills. But I think I actually had a guy that all he had done was a 6-day mountaineering course, and that was fine. Um, but he summited, and he was great, and it was a little bit of extra management on my part just to make sure his gloves weren't blown away and things like that. So, but that generally speaking, we're not going to probably do that sort of uh, lesser qualified person. We're really trying to screen people and make sure again, so they have the foundational skills. They may have some high altitude experience, preferably something that's more expedition like although something like the Mexico volcanoes would be good. You're getting up to 19,000 feet almost. The height, the perceived height anyway of Vinson in about 18,000 feet. So, you want to have that experience with you for sure. And then I think, the more you have, the more you're going to enjoy the climb. And I think the more successful you'll be as a team member and also reaching the summit. So I'm happy to talk to people more about that. Just, people have different experiences that they bring. So, happy to discuss that, make sure you got what it takes. So you really, you can do it, but you don't want to learn about how to manage yourself for the first time in 30-degree, minus 30-degree temperatures for the first time. It's better to have like some winter camping experience and that sort of thing. Just so there's so many different pieces to being prepared for this climb, and so we like to check the boxes on that one and make sure everybody's got all those things taken care of and ready to go.
And I mentioned, so we're planning a follow-on webinar to this one. We're going to partner with Feathered Friends to do that. If you're in Seattle, you'll be able to join us at the store. But there we'll really dig into different, layering systems, down coats and jackets and options there. So stay tuned for more details about when that's going to happen and how you can join us. If you're not in Seattle, we'll live stream it so you can still join us and get all the details that you need.
Yeah,
But the
yeah. Well, I was going to say one thing to mention too is Vinson is a very gear intensive trip, and it's a kind of climb that you can't cut corners. So, and that's where doing that presentation at Fairly Friends will be super helpful for folks. But yeah, you can't go there. I'm going to take a 0-degree bag and I'm sleeping down parking. You just can't do that stuff on Vinson. It's very unforgiving. If you get into those minus 30, minus 40-degree temperatures and you're not prepared, you're gonna suffer and frostbite. You name it. There's all sorts of cold weather injuries that you have to contend with and prevent. So no cutting corners in the equipment list.
Yeah, absolutely. Show up with all of it. Also, you can't get right if you somehow don't have it when you fly to Union Glacier, like there's no REI there to get it. So you have
Yeah.
to make sure you've got everything you need and have like repair kits and contingency plans if something falls apart or needs a repair while you're on the ice. And a big part of preparation, maybe not my favorite part, but definitely something I'm very into helping athletes with is just mental preparation. Um, and I speak to a lot of athletes who really are struggling with just the downtime that happens with expedition climbing. I think especially on a mountain like Vinson, where there can be weather delays of a couple of days or more. And so being ready I think being flexible and just able to go with the flow and realizing that even though, it looks like your flight might be tonight, it could be 2 days from tonight. And that, you've got the contingency plans, but also just the mental flexibility to go with the flow and be ready for those last minute changes in schedule. Have a plan for downtime. Also, there's a lot of hurry up and wait in expedition climbing, and whether that's movies that you've downloaded or a book, or you want to catch up on like letters to friends or just some way to pass the time. My favorite thing is to color. I think I didn't do that enough when I was a kid, so I actually bring colored pencils and coloring books, and that's my favorite thing to do on an expedition, but have something you can do just to like keep yourself mentally engaged and positive and able to go with the flow and be ready for whatever is going to happen on your expedition. Anything else? We'll talk about physical prep next, but anything else about general prep, Mark?
No, I don't think so. I think that, like I said, there's a lot of different pieces, and together, uh, it's going to make your trip much better. And you got to think it through. And we're happy to help you with all your questions because there's bound to be questions and get you all ready for it.
Yep. And I do think that's a big part of what we are signing up for when we book an expedition is to make sure that we're ready physically and mentally and we have all of our gear dialed before we show up to the mountain. And so, like I said, at Alpine Athletics, that's one of the things that we help people with. We really focus on, building first understanding where athletes are starting from. So what's your current level of fitness? And then because we're climbers, we know what it takes as coaches to get you from that point to where you need to be for Mount Vinson. And so we focus on building the strength and the endurance that you need in order to show up for that mountain absolutely ready for whatever it's going to throw at you. The unique thing about Vinson, and it's the same for Denali, is that we will have you pull a tire or a sled or something to get used to that day that you've got to move from low camp to or from base camp to low camp. So that's something unique, I think, about Vinson. And I think if you skip that part of your training, like Mark said, you don't want to show up in minus 20 or 30-degree weather and start to figure these things out for the first time. If you've practiced it with a similar amount of weight in your neighborhood or in a local park, it's going to feel probably pretty easy when you have to do it for real on the mountain. So everything that we do is customized for every athlete, again, based on where you're at, the mountain you're going to climb, and our knowledge as climbers and coaches to help get you there. We're going to make sure that you've thought about physical preparation, that you have some mindset tools in case things do get boring or things start to be harder than you anticipated. We want to make sure that you've got some tools that you can go to get you through those difficult times mentally. And then we'll walk through all the gear with you so that when we sort of hand you off to Mountain Madness, you've got everything that you need and you can show up and be ready to contribute to the team. So that's preparation. That's really what we wanted to talk about for the most part today. Are there any, I know we had a few questions in the chat, but any other questions from anyone? If not, we'll go through a couple of things that we often get asked. So we'll give people a couple minutes to maybe jot their questions in the Q&A, but I mentioned, that there's this intention and really a lot of compliance about keeping Antarctica as pristine as it is. And so one of the questions we often get asked is like, how do you go to the bathroom? So, if you've climbed, you know that each mountain sort of has a different process or protocol for doing that. On Vinson, any liquid waste, actually, so you'll pee in a bottle, and then there are certain designated spots on the ice where you will empty that bottle. So it's not uncommon to see someone sort of, carrying their urine with them as they're climbing because they're climbing to the next designated spot to dump that urine. And then any solid human waste gets collected and actually flown off the continent. I think it goes back to Chile. So it's something that we take very seriously. Like we want to make sure that this continent remains beautiful and pristine for all the people that are going to climb it for years to come. So we really follow those leave no trace principles. Another question is about like, what if I get hurt? Like I'm very far away. I mean, you're at least, an hour flight away from any kind of medical care. And so it's one reason why we want people to show up and be as prepared as possible. And I don't know, Mark, you can probably talk about just sort of the plans in place if something does go awry or there's more medical care that's needed.
Yeah, I think again, prevention is the way to go, right? So, but things do happen. We actually had somebody that her pack gave her a lot of problems, and she actually wasn't aware of it, but she got a blister on her hip, and so and it was enough so that she wasn't able to finish the climb, but she was able to get down to base camp. They had somebody there, a doctor that could help sort of mitigate what as much as they could there. And then, as Lisa said, you're off to Union Glacier, where they have some real facilities. It's certainly not you can call it a field hospital if you want, but still pretty limited facilities, but enough that you can, take care of sort of basic, maybe some broken bones or sprained ankles or whatever. But other than that, you got to get back to the continent. And so I think one of the things just to remember is like in this example with the pack, it's just like make sure all your equipment works, right? Because
Yeah.
you could get a pair of boots and you first time you use them, you go to Vinson and you get blisters. So, just small things like that. But think about the big picture, make sure you're well organized and everything's in place, and there's really very few injuries
Yeah.
on the mountain.
Yep. Well, if you have other questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Or if you're wondering, like, am I ready? Do I have enough experience? Please check in with the Mountain Madness team. They can talk you through sort of where you're at today and, when you'll be ready or getting you ready for Vinson. The Alpine Athletics team as well is happy to chat with you about any fitness questions or goals that you have. We love talking about getting people ready to climb. And Mark, here, you have a sort of special offering for people.
Yeah, well, you can see it here. We're offering $1,000 off, Vincent, and hopefully that helps some. It's a very expensive trip, but hopefully we gave enough information for you to realize what you're paying for this trip. It's incredible. So, $1,000 off. Hopefully that helps. Oh, and by the way, we're also going to Carson's Pyramid, September 27th, and we're offering $1,000 off that as well.
Oh, cool.
And if you want to go someplace a little warmer, that includes a stopover in Bali, just so you know, so you can get your warm weather fix there. So you can go surfing and have some fun. So
Yeah.
just for all of this, just go online if you want to book it. There you can book it online, and certainly you got the contact information here for you. Give us a call or email us. Happy to help you, and hopefully we hear from you.
Yep. We have one last question from William, which is, what are your recommended boots? Are Olympus Mons the recommended boot for Vinson? I have some opinions. Mark, what do you think?
Well, I think it's got to be an 8,000 meter
Yeah.
peak boot. That's all there is to it. So there's a lot out there. So I think if you have a place, it might be hard for some people where they live to go try them on. But I think you should be able to get in a boot and it fits right off the bat. So definitely it's worth. Sometimes you can get multiple pairs shipped out to you if you don't have a store nearby, and try it that way, and then just return what you don't want, and that's a good way to ensure that you're got a good fit and you're not going to show up with a boot that doesn't really work for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think 8,000 meter boots like the Olympus Mons are the way to go. And especially if you're planning to climb all 7 summits, at some point you're going to need those boots, and it's a big investment, as is everything related to mountaineering. But the sooner you can get them and get them broken in, or I like to say, let them break you in, the better you're going to be for those future climbs.
Yeah, and along with uh, your feet and your boots and all that, the extremities are where you really got to be careful in these cold weather environments. So the glove systems and mitten systems you use are really critical. So that's another place you really want to just take a deep breath and just dive in and make sure you're getting the right thing. There's a lot to choose from,
Yeah.
but that's one of the things hands. That's the most common place people get frostbite, and so it's the same thing with those face masks. Those are super helpful in these cold environments. Very cold specific pieces of equipment, obviously. Same with your sleeping bag. So yeah.
Yep. Well, thanks everyone. I appreciate you showing up today. Thanks to everyone who's going to watch this later on YouTube. Thanks for your questions and your engagement. That is really fun to see, how people are thinking through these things. Definitely take advantage of this $1,000 off. Nobody offered me that when I climbed Vinson a few years ago. So that's a great offer and something to take advantage of if you can sign up before the end of September. And please reach out. Mark and I love talking about climbing gear, helping people get ready. So if you have any questions, we're here to help you through those. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. Bye-bye.
Bye.